Guys, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me begin by expressing my strong objection to the current legislative process in the House. Someday soon, we don't know, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday, maybe Saturday, 8 appropriations bills, which, as I understand it, will add up to some $500 billion, will be dumped into one omnibus bill, and members here with relatively little knowledge as to what's in that legislation are going to vote for it. And I think that's a pretty poor process. What is of particular concern to me is that within that huge omnibus bill will be, as I understand it, an $18 billion appropriation for the expansion of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Now, it seems to me that at a time when we're cutting back on veterans' benefits, when 43 million Americans have no health care, when millions of middle-class families are unable to afford to send their kids to college, that maybe, just maybe, we might want to have an open debate upon the wisdom of putting $18 billion of taxpayers' money into the IMF. Maybe we would like to hear the pros and the cons of that discussion. Maybe we would like to see an up and down vote on that issue. But I guess that's not going to happen. Mr. Clinton, President Clinton wants the IMF. Mr. Gingrich wants the IMF. Every large multinational corporation in this country wants the IMF. The corporate media wants the IMF. And I guess they're going to get the IMF without any serious debate. But let me just say a few words about the IMF. I happen to agree with those people who say that the international economy is in a fragile state right now and that the United States has got to act. I disagree with those people who say that the solution is to pour more money into the IMF. In my opinion, if recent history is any indicator of what might happen in the future, giving more money to the IMF might only make a bad situation, an unstable situation, even worse. All we have to do is take a hard look at what has happened throughout the world in those countries which the IMF has, quote unquote, helped, to understand that maybe the IMF path is not the road that we want to go down. They, quote unquote, helped the people of Mexico several years ago. Today, as a result, or partially as a result of their help, the Mexican economy is in disastrous condition. Wages are down, unemployment and child labor are up, and their Congress in Mexico is now addressing a massive bailout of their banking system. But something did happen out of the Mexican bailout of several years ago, and that is that the investors that we bailed out, the large banks and speculators, learned a very important lesson. They learned that the taxpayers of the United States would be there, no matter how ill-advised or stupid their investments might be, no matter how much money they might lose, no problem. Uncle Sam was there to bail them out, and they took that lesson to Asia, and they continued that process. They pumped huge sums of money into Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and South Korea. And then, when that part of the world began to suffer, no problem, the President and Mr. Rubin and Mr. Summers and everyone said, well, we got to bail them out again. And we bailed them out again. We bailed out major banks and financial investors because, you know, we don't want them to lose any money. Small business people, family farmers, hey, they can lose money. But when you're the Chase Manhattan Bank, you're not supposed to lose money. You only make money, I suppose. And then the meltdown in Russia began. Poor Russia. It is incredible that a great country with such a tragic history has got to suffer all over again. When communism fell in 1991, the Russian government received the attention and the guidance of the IMF and all of their wonderful policy advisors. And tragically, the Russian government listened to them and took their advice. It is fair to say that never before in modern history has a major industrialized nation experienced the kind of decline in a 7-year period as Russia has under IMF guidance and with $20 billion of IMF loans. Everybody knows that the communist economy within the Soviet Union. Okay. I thank the chairman.